everybody. You're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. I don't know why I'm talking this way.
I like it.
I think because I was just looking at a lot of shots of Perry White in the new, and he was the most like direct character in the, in most of the past iterations. So I just came out of the gate like that. Don't know why.
Embodying Perry.
But I did.
It worked. Throw with it.
Yeah, it did. It did work. I'll do that more often. Possibly.
Just not the entire show.
So the last time we had a live stream, I was there with Steve right there.
He was right here.
I was right.
He was
there.
Right here. He was physically here.
It was
in my space.
It was weird.
It was definitely an experience. It was awesome.
Yeah, and the reason that was the case was because Steve and I went to HeroesCon in Charlotte this past weekend. Unfortunately, Caleb could not join us. We're hoping he will join us next year once again. But Steve, you had a good time, I assume?
I did. I had a really good time. I always love going to the show, getting to see creators that we've talked to before, creators that are always fun to see every time. But also, getting to attend with a good friend, and wonderful people. Yay. And also getting to see some panels too. Panels are always fun. Back in the day when it was just lonely old me, I would never go to panels. I would just kind of like wander around Indie Island and that area. But getting to go and sit at panels with Bill and other people is it's really cool. You get to hear about comics straight from the creators themselves. Stories, personal histories, motivations, inspirations, all that stuff. And sometimes you learn a lot of really cool things, and get to hear some really great stories. So it was wonderful. And this time I went bin diving. I actually did go bin diving specifically to buy stuff for me, which is shocking. Like I never do that. I never ever do that. Like I'll go and I'll collect trades. Like
the closest you come to is the $5 trades.
Oh yeah. I'll look through those because I love those. Those are a lot of fun, and I always find great treasures. But this time I had a mission for specific books, and I got some of those. So I was really excited about those, and I'll tell you later.
Okay, cool.
How about you, Bill?
I had a very good time. Again, some of my instituting of panel time is due to ambulatory issues. But I think even the healthiest person will admit it's good to get off your feet for a little bit with the unfortunate pattern of conventions of carpeting to concrete to carpeting to concrete. It's
mostly concrete.
I think it'd be rough to anybody. But I had a very good time. Got to spend almost every minute of it with Steve. I think the only time we were separated was a little bit of shopping and the one panel period where we went to different panels. But you were there the whole friggin' time. Yeah.
Attached at the hip.
Could not get rid of you. But no, I thought it was a well balanced con. It's bigger now than the last few times we've gone. They've expanded some of the areas that used to be dedicated more to food and the cars, and there's a very strange history with the Ecto one and some of us on the road. But
fuck you, Echo.
Yeah. But no, it's a great con in that it's just comics. Yeah. And I'm glad that these cons still exist that are formatted that way. And, just on a kind of somber note, it's like I'm getting older. And when we join on the next live stream in 2 weeks, I'll actually be a year older. So, my birthday's coming up. And I don't know how many of these 3-day cons I got left in me. I really don't. But I'm just gonna keep going until the body tells me, like, you absolutely cannot do this anymore.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about cons, though, I think you can do cons two different ways. Right now, I think we do a mix of them, but some people go to cons for the bin diving. They go so they can sit in every panel possible, and they want to move and go and just run the entire time. And then you have some people who go that, they go to see friends, right? They know they've got some folks there that they know from all over the place, podcast community, et cetera, what have you. And so they go and they'll meet up at the con for a little bit. They'll do a little bit of shopping, but more so it's like, okay, well, let's go do something. Like let's go hang out. And I think we do something in between. And obviously I wasn't able to go this time, but I think that's a really good break. So it is finding that time. Like I don't have to be on that con floor the entire time. And I know there's always like this weird sense of FOMO that pushes us, like, oh, well, if I don't go check that out, I'll the thing that I've been looking for, my grail is in there or something along those lines. But I think I've gotten to the point now that I don't do that as much. I'm just like, if I check it out, I check it out. If not, I really am going for the people and to just be in that environment. And so, I think if you treat it like that, then you're going to get some extra time off your feet. You're also going to just enjoy the quality of the time that you spend more. And I love that you guys go to when you go to cons, you go to panels together. I've been to a lot of the cons. Some of my favorite panels that I ever attended was at New York Comic-Con. Had some great stuff. But when you go to cons frequently, right, you start seeing the same people in the same panels, and you go and they're kind of telling the same stories, and they're just kind of regurgitating things that you've already heard. And I don't like that per se. Like if you're going to take the time to do a panel, do it authentically. Like there's only, I'm going to throw some shade. There's only so many times I want to hear Howard Chaykin tell the same story. They're good and they're fun, but it's still the same. Like it's performative, and it's not really like I want to learn something and not hear the same stuff. So I like when you get to go see some of the new creators speak. I like when you get to go hear some of the more indie and underground creators speak. I don't need to hear Steranko again. I don't need that. So, how were the quality of the panels that you guys went to? Were they?
They were fun. I mean, it was a little disappointing with some things that we've gotten used to, like the Craig Yo panels and the and Chaykin. And I will disagree with you on Chaykin in one point, in that you can kind of guide him into different directions. Yeah, and hear shit you've never heard about before.
But so you have to that's on the moderator.
I also know where you're coming from. If you saw a panel with Mike Grell in 2002 and he gave one in 2018, it was the same panel. Yeah. So I know what you're talking about. I thought they were fun. I thought they were pretty balanced. That it was a good mix of, for lack of a better term, old and new. I don't think there's really a definite distinction there, because one of the panels I went to was the All Reds, and these are creators who have been at it a very long time, but they feel like they just joined the medium, in some ways, with some of their enthusiasm over things. I think that was the only one where there was news, and that they announced in kind of stealth form, Wonder Woman Golden Age as a follow-up to the previous projects with Mark Russell and the All Reds. And I thought,
I don't think there was.
In terms of, we were, before we got onto the live stream here, we just had a side conversation about films that were tearjerkers, and I think the LGBTQ panel this year, that was your panel tearjerker. With some people recounting, how they, how the art form effectively gave them an outlet they didn't know they had. I think that's a fair way of characterizing it. And
I mean, they're absolutely. I think the LGBTQIA plus panel this year, I believe it's the same moderator as last year, and some of the same people. But I loved the group this year. I think everybody had a really good rapport, which can be, that can make or break a panel. Yeah. When you have, like one person on a panel who completely bogarts the mic and, doesn't let anybody else get a story in otherwise, you could see
Or
the
you
other
have-
panel members.
Or you
shut
have
down.
the panelists that, you know, if you get 3 words out of them, they were a lot.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the editors, the Marvel editors panel, where it was basically Al Milgrom and the Fingeroth panel between the two of them. I think
They
they
kind of
they spoke
bogarted
up
it.
50%.
It was okay though.
Yeah, it was fun to hear, and also props to the moderator there.
I thought he was terrible. I thought he was a terrible moderator.
So the interesting thing with this moderator, he is very academic. Very academic. I don't think he was the right moderator for the panel. And I think that he tried to steer it in a particular way that I think could have had a much better conversation, but he didn't explain it.
Not with the terrain that they were covering. That was
not necessarily, but maybe. I think he could have, but he didn't. He did not communicate his question.
I don't think
properly.
he had a chance in hell.
Severely disagree, Bill.
It the way he
severely disagree. He could have, but he didn't use the right. He didn't couch it correctly, and because of that, he made an enemy of Al pretty quickly, and that was it. And then from then on, you could see that he was like, retreat. And then it was just like, hey, any just general questions about editorial? And just had like the rest of the rest of the time.
But I do think that Al Milgrom brought up a good point about diversity even back then.
That's what the moderator should have. He should have explained it in a different way, because he immediately went on the offensive and said, I think that diversity didn't exist back then. You can just see it historically. It wasn't very diverse. Diversity meant different things back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, early 80s. If you had an Italian, a Jew, and a black person working in the same office, that was extremely diverse. You don't need everybody represented. But
I also kind of think of Marvel in the 80s as white man, middle-aged milquetoast. And there was Anna Sensi, there was Louise Simonson, there was Larry Hama. There was Jim Owsley. You know, it wasn't. My perception of that may not have been. That kind of changed my perception of the makeup of the creators. Yeah, in the 80s.
Yeah, and it's just because you picked for the panel, a group of white guys all the same age, does not mean that was the bullpen and the writers and the artists and everybody who was actually represented.
But you also stuck with who's there too.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah. But yeah, I think if he had gone at it rather than like saying, "Oh, it just wasn't diverse," just sort of like directing it as a question to the teams and understanding how.
Yeah, I thought he did a lousy job. I thought he did an absolutely lousy job moderating.
I think he started off pretty well, and then it was that question that kind of screwed him. So he retreated.
This is the most controversial the show has ever been. I love it.
La Bamba.
He was also the.
We were naming creators and stuff, and I also think you have to throw out Arvell Jones in there.
Oh yeah, there's definitely others. Renee Wisenstansler.
We can go on and on, but
you can keep going.
There's a lot.
Gene Day. There definitely were people of color and women that were part.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be necessarily people of color. Just people with very different backgrounds and origin.
Mm-hmm.
Origins and things like that. There's different ways of presenting diversity.
And I don't want to say the infiltration, but the incorporation of British artists into the mix, not more DC with that, but you did have artists like Alan Davis and like John Bolton,
right,
at that time. Yeah.
So, and if you look at anybody's roster of artists and writers now, I mean, it is, international. You've got a large contingent of Filipino artists. You've got, South American artists, writers, letterers, colorists, lots of different European groups and just everybody. It's very, I think now it's very different. But anyway,
so Steve and Bill sometimes do disagree.
Yeah, we do. And the same moderator, just so you know, moderator was also the moderator on the Kayla E panel.
And the portion of that I sat in, I thought he did a better job.
Oh, yeah.
On that.
Oh, yeah. because he was academic and he was talking to someone who has the academic background. Kayla E, studied at Harvard, studied art history, comics, graphic design there. So like there was a lot of that dialogue that she's used to navigating, and he's very much a academic moderator. I don't know if moderator is the right word, but he's very academic, and that can throw, I think, some guests off. But I loved, one of the things that surprised me was Bill and I sat in on the Frank Frazetta sort of like art panel for a little bit, and that was fascinating.
Yeah, well, and that was, we didn't sit on the entire panel because it was between
just a little bit
ones that we were going to. Yeah,
just a little bit, but just like talking about academic, but in this way using a lot of visuals. They looked at the development of his style and who he worked with, who he mentored with, mentored under or apprenticed under. And you could see from the 40s to the early 50s how his style changed, but also in comparison to the people that he was working with. Like
and
what they were doing and what they weren't
of
doing.
of his being their assistant.
Yep.
And I wanted to say, like, who did I bring up that was an example of somebody you could tell? Anyway, they brought up there was somebody that he was an assistant for, and when Frazetta was there, this individual's style was at its peak, and it certainly was. Whether it was Frazetta doing the backgrounds or shading, he definitely made a contribution. And then after Frazetta was no longer his assistant, kind of his style pretty much reverted. Yeah,
right. I think Frazetta was clearly doing a lot of the women that appeared in the panels, because there was a huge difference in anatomy between how his mentor was drawing and how he was drawing. So
that's who I brought up, Rick Buckler, when George Perez was his assistant. That's what I brought up. That there's a kind of a Buckler's work, or at least the work that's credited to him, is just more exciting from the points in time where George was acting as his assistant. That was the example that I provided.
Another panel.
Caleb would have liked it.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, did they get into any of like the Hal Foster stuff?
No, while we were there, we don't know what the full.
Not while we were there, yeah. But it was a long panel. I think we sat in there for maybe 20 minutes, and it was an hour and a half. It was actually one of the longer panels. One that I found was pretty fun, and it was actually one of the first panels on Friday that we both went to, was the Michel Fiffe panel, looking at his work on Copra. And, because now that as of the week prior, the final issue of Copra 50 had been released. And so it was kind of like, this was the perfect time for him to talk about, like,
it was almost a retrospective.
Exactly. Like how he started, how his style changed. I mean, talking about styles for somebody who was doing all the labor on the book, from the layouts, the design, the pencils, the inks, the writing, everything, lettering especially. You talked about that. We learned that Michel Fiffe puts the letters in first and then draws around them.
Really?
Yeah. Not always, but most of the time.
It was so interesting.
Now, when you say the letters, are you talking about like the onomatopoeia in the background, the sound effects, or are you talking about word bubbles and everything?
Dialogue, word bubbles, all that.
Really?
This all comes.
He puts it in first.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's the only person I've ever heard do that.
Yeah,
I've never heard of anybody else doing that.
I know of some newspaper strip creators that do that, but I think that's a very different dynamic.
Right.
So
especially the way he plays with panels anyway.
Yeah.
He plays with the panels, the gutters, how things break through, across multiple panels. And, he talked about how it's changed over time. Like when he first started to now, just how he draws is a big change. But, also everything that he ripped off. And,
about, he
not ripped off.
He brought up a very good point in that, he certainly wasn't the first indie creator to kind of ape DC or Marvel Big Two properties and dynamics, but he also felt, and I totally agree with this, that he was one of the few that wasn't mocking them.
No, yeah, that was
celebrating.
That was one of the big things that was clear in this, is that especially I'm just blanking on the character's name, but he's essentially the Punisher type character. He has a much more interesting sort of trajectory throughout the series, but he literally is the Punisher. Looks like the Punisher, kind of has a skull on his all black outfit and uses guns a lot.
To what Bill said, that whole point about not mocking them, you really are homaging them. I think in my book, there's two people who do that really, really well in conventional comics, and that's obviously Fife, but also Matthew Allison, who wrote Cancor. I think he kind of takes that, even what he does in Cancor, like he's using the superhero aspect, using kind of that same thing, and then driving that point home, but and pointing out some of the stuff about it, but he does it in a very honest way and almost a very earnest way too. So both of those figures are folks from indie comics that I think should be paid more attention to.
I mean, I'm definitely because I haven't read all of Copra. I came on pretty late. I came on when he made the switch to Image.
I was at the beginning.
Yeah, I know.
Just because of where I was.
I was a day one reader.
I wasn't quite a day one. But I would say I was like a 6-month one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I remember I used to listen to a podcast, War Rocket Ajax, wonderfully named, and they, the co-hosts on that were huge fans of Fife's work when Copra first started, and he first started coming to HeroesCon. So they talked about that quite a bit because it was it's local to Charlotte. These two guys. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sad that I missed jumping on the bandwagon earlier, but I'm glad I started a couple of years ago and have been just loving it since.
Steve, the show that you talked about, Copra 50. And the panel that motivated me to get the non-image version of it. So
his version,
and
which is good. No trade dress. So.
And there are familiar names. I have a very big gap between issues. So like I think with the compendiums, I probably have a gap between 16 and 49. It's pretty sizable, but that I open this up and I see Lloyd and I see Rax, and it was like that tells me I have a lot to enjoy coming up. So thank you,
Rax and Goothy and
Maury, and thank
Guthie.
you, Michelle Fife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it was fun hearing from him, but I mean the panels were great. The Indie Island, this was the 20-year anniversary of the Indie Island concept. And it was definitely well stocked with creators. And I should have snagged a t-shirt. I really should have, but I always think about it too late, and then they're out of my size and forget it, But it was great, and the vendors this year were pretty much on fire. I mean, we had some pretty good vendors. I know Bill wasn't super impressed. He wasn't able to find all of some of those Blackhawks that I think a couple of years ago you
that was
lost out
killer.
on.
I was like literally standing in back of a guy that was taking Blackhawk issue after Blackhawk issue that I did not have. That's a sad tale. But in terms of Indie Island, like even I jumped in. And out of the three of us, I'm certainly the least indie minded these days because I've seen it all and read it all. But some people that we did stop by was Brandon Lehman, and I got two of his mini books. Michael Myers and Steve and I both got this one. It's a kind of choose your own adventure.
I love that.
You live a miserable life.
It's brilliant, and I also in addition to that one, I picked up his ghost stories, which honestly, Brendan Lehman, I don't know why I've been sleeping on him for a while, because he is absolutely hilarious. This is like scary stories to tell in the dark, but like cynical and very absurdly hilarious.
The Michael Myers, Steve. I wish you picked up the Michael Myers. You would have.
I'm gonna be collecting all of his oeuvre over the.
And then another gentleman that we talked to on the last day, Joey Navarro Jr. I picked up some of his fanzines. The not safe for work, my not safe for work adventures with Superman, and this is all I can show you. And then this one, I picked up the fanzine, but he has a full book that I certainly need to pick up. Two Brothers, a Ghost Rider family road trip. And this is the opening chapter of Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch going on a cross-country trek as brothers who happen to be Ghost Riders. And like this was one of those things, like 3 pages in, and I laughed out loud. 3 pages in. And then one of the panelists that was on the LGBT panel, Jared Melendez, I thought his story was fascinating. Got his first book, Chef's Kiss. He is a chef. And apart from the comic book stuff, he also writes cookbooks for genre properties. So he has a Pokemon cookbook. He had the Dune cookbook and the Percy Jackson and the Olympians cookbook.
The official by Disney.
Yeah. And so that
a little disturbed by the idea of a Pokemon cookbook, just because it sounds like you're cooking Pokemon, which could be. I mean, I need to star you. I
did make that joke to him. I don't think he was amused at all. Probably because he's heard it a trillion times.
Yeah, sure.
It's recipes inspired by Pokemon.
Yeah, it's not like Squirtle soup. Yeah.
No, I want the horror. I want the Junji Ito, like Shintaro Kago horror version of that, where they show you how to cook a Bulbasaur, right? Like a Bulbasaur stew, where you get the good mix of meat and this awesome plant base with the bulb, and it's got some seasonings to it, and it's almost like the tentacles are little spaghetti. Like I want that. I want to know how to Squirtle soup.
Yeah, we should have him on so that you can talk about recipes that you'd like to see in the.
And we should have Brendan Navarro on, and we should have somebody else on. So
absolutely.
So we'll see what happens in the next few.
Yeah, I need to do a better job. I promised Bill I would start helping trying to line up interviews, and I have come woefully short of meeting my tasks. I need to do that.
Okay.
Start reaching out.
We also laid the groundwork while we were at the show for some of them. So
very cool.
And in terms of old friends, always happy to see Steve Bryant. And
Steve Bryant made a new friend this year.
Made a very big new friend in Steve's husband.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Oh my God. It was almost like the monkeys when Davy and the girl with like their stars in their eyes would be when they were talking about attire and fashion. And
oh my God.
Steve wants to realize in the next and we got some news from Steve too that he's getting the rights back to Athena Voltaire come February.
Very
so
good.
Excited to hear that. Was so happy to hear that. And while we were there, he actually he did have copies of issue number 4 of Evie and the Helsings. And the day that I got back, I got the Kickstarter copy that came with like some extra stuff.
I got the other thing, and I also kind of made him blush with how I wanted him to sign my book.
Made him speechless.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that when the next time he's on. He's probably going to be like, Bill, I haven't gotten over that yet.
I need to hear this story.
Yeah. And my friend Jeff Messner, I got a physical copy of his book. And yeah, so good times in the indie sphere there.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
Very, very
well, I take
cool.
it that the shopping was also fruitful and plentiful.
It was, but I have to be sensible about things because there's 2 things that are still at Steve's place right now.
Yeah.
Just, I made my run and my box, which came today, thank God, because I was worried it was lost in the system. Then all of a sudden it was going to be delivered in 15 minutes, so that was good. But you have to be sensible. I'm also going to a con this upcoming Saturday with my car in the parking lot. So some of the extreme bin excuse me, I'm hiccuping here. Some of the extreme bin diving, I'm kind of reserving for that. I mean, it's always a good shopping show. There's always things. Oh my God, Caleb.
Yeah.
Savage Sword of Conan was everywhere.
The fucking Savage Sword of Conan. Everyone
everywhere.
had them.
Everybody had a Savage Sword of Conan box.
That's
like
awesome.
A box, multiple
boxes.
Multiple boxes.
If you were looking for Savage Sword of Conan, this was the place.
So we're talking
show.
Magazine size.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're talking from issue one all the way through. Like
all the way through.
Everybody
the
had
Saga and the 80s issues that are kind of hard to find.
I've been trying to be a good boy about saving money, but I've got the first Savage Sword omnibus, and I really want to start stacking those up at some point. I'm trying not to, because honestly, if I get any more big omnibus, I'm gonna have to like get another bookshelf, or buy a new house with better built-ins, which is what I want. But we'll see how that. I'm not gonna buy a new house because I want Conan books. But
there are worse reasons to get a new home.
But the one sleeping in there doesn't seem to think that's a good enough reason to go ahead and pull that trigger right now.
But just like last year, there seemed to be an abundance of sectars.
It's funny how that works, right? There's like, and the best I can figure is that there were several people. I guess that collection just started selling at better prices, and so a lot of people just dumped theirs into the market. That's got to be what it is, unless for some reason, because it always happens, right? Like sometimes you'll go and there'll just be a shit ton. I mean, there's always old Avengers, but there'll be a lot of old Avengers, or there will just be these kind of niche books that you'll see that you don't see all the time, and they just flood the market with them. And I never know why that happens, but yeah, it happens from time to time.
I think you definitely can see that with ROM.
Yeah,
there were single issues of ROM all over the place now.
The question, about 6 years ago, I went to like 3 cons in a month, and there were like the question comics everywhere. Everybody had it. I mean, full runs left and right.
So, one of the things that I wanted to do this time, and actually like pinpoint, had to go and get something. I have just been bitten by the bug of 70s and 80s anthology comic magazines. So, Heavy Metal, like the latest volume of Heavy Metal came out. It was great. It was a fun read. It was pretty cool. But I kind of wanted to get back and check out those old Heavy Metals. Check out the old Eries, the old Creepies, the old, magazine format books that I was never allowed to have as a kid. And I didn't know anybody's older brother well enough to get any of their old ones when they were done with them. So I actually went and I found, several different places, went and got a couple different things. But I actually did pick up the Heavy Metal from my birth month, which I guess I'm not sure what number it was, but it's fantastic to be able to find some of these things and not have them be ridiculously expensive. But the costs were kind of higher than I expected. And so I guess I'm going to have to start raiding like flea markets and stuff. But it's cool. It's great being able to read the original stories, the way that they were presented first, whether they were reprints from like European magazines or whether they were original stories, like in the case of the Warren magazines, and also getting to read all of the old ads. Like the ads are different. The ads are different because, like, if you read comics in the 70s, like, DC and Marvel comics, there are ads that are specific to mostly kids and like young teens, and like rarely you'll get some like adult stuff. But in these magazines, they know their audience, and their audience loves monster movies and Vampirella. So there's like a lot of like monster type stuff. They're selling before the days of like home VHS, before VHS, everybody's selling like Reg 8 and Super 8, reel to reels. Like it's wild, 200 feet of big screen quality. It's just fantastic.
It'd be like 8 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 8 minutes or
like
something.
8 minutes of film, yeah.
And like reading after reading Final Cut back there on the shelf, where they talk about that kind of
models too.
Yeah. Oh, models. You can get models. huge, like a huge, plastic kit of the Hulk. Like these things are being sold there where you don't normally see those in the comics, like the mainstream comics at the time. But it's fascinating to read and just get to see these.
Yeah,
it's a culture. It's like it's a type of culture that you knew existed and was there, but not having grown up in it or not being exposed to it at that age when I could have. If I had really liberal parents, like that would have been very different. Or like lots of older brothers and cousins who are all kind of crazy, whatever. It's neat to be able to go back and kind of read those and experience that. So,
well, I mean, I feel the same way just about stuff. I mean, like right now, I'm reading all the Namor Submariner Masterworks stuff. Like I love going back and reading that stuff. I've got all the Spider-Man and Fantastic Four omnibus, Hulk omnibus. Like I love going back and reading stuff from the 40s and 50s and 60s. I think that's honestly one of the things. I mean, look, the internet has made it so that anybody can look up Wikipedia and just talk about shit out their ass, right? Like they without actually having experience. Everybody's a expert on everything from the 1960s that Marvel did, right? But how many people have actually, I mean, how many people my age and younger have actually sit down and read the first 40 issues of Amazing Spider-Man? I would wager, I mean, I'm not saying, obviously I think us, but also you're Gen X. I said my age, so millennials, us of the younger persuasion.
The young whippersnapper generation.
I don't think that's a thing. I talk to people all the time who are my age and younger who've never read that stuff, and the vast majority of folks haven't. But they all know what it is. It's kind of like people who can tell you everything that's happening in modern comics, but they don't read comics. They just go online and read forums for some reason. Or the people who don't play video games, they watch other people play video games on YouTube. I don't understand this. Like, this is my old man yelling at the sun moment, but that's a thing, right? So I love listening. I love
just watch cutscenes because they're canon.
Well, it is part of the. It's a really weird phenomenon if you think about it, and we could probably go off on for hours on this. But like, when I was reading comics, when I was like a kid, I could not afford to get all of those old books. So if I need to learn about it, I had to read it through facsimiles or reprints and things like that, and those, or from other people.
And that was, it was kind of, you had to be a bit intrepid in piecing it together.
Yeah,
through that.
Absolutely.
Like
all the little editorial, notes and everything that would kind of tell you where to look and where to get that. Though most of them, I'm not going to be able to track down, X-Men 32 or whatever for any reasonable cost. But now you do have that access to the entire history of every single character, every single comic, all of that. And people aren't, and not only that, but now they have access to the original comics in digital format, so you can actually go and read them, find copies of these to read, not necessily buy if you need
for
to.
$7.99 a month or something.
Yeah, just get a Marvel Unlimited or a DC Infinite subscription. You can go back and you can read, the original showcases.
But I think going back to Steve's point about the magazines, there is something about the experience of how people originally experienced this with the material that was outside of the stories. That's very that can't be replicated. And yes, you can. Yes, there's like a ton of famous monsters on, but it's not as prevalent.
Sure.
There's a ton of famous monsters and magazines like that on archive.org and some other things, but it's also not the same, hitting a button as it is turning a page.
Absolutely. We do have a quick comment here. Joel the Geek has joined us. Hey, Joel. My comic book store has a rack of heavy metal, and got to get them X-ray glasses, of course. Constant standby in those back ads. It's like watching Three Bears talking about comics. It is just like that, Joel. It's very much like Three Bears talking about comics. But yeah, thanks for joining us. I mean, it is pretty cool being able to pick up the original issue if you can, and unless you have all the money in the world, you're not going to be able to pick up all of them, but you can pick up some of them and experience what it was like to actually read those. It's pretty, it's cool. So I was happy I was able to force
And like I
myself
said,
to
as
go
we were
Bandai.
shopping for that, I think you specifically with heavy metal, I think you would be better served at like flea markets and even antique shops,
Oh
that
yeah,
might have in magazine sections than a comic
and
book dealer.
I think the cool thing with Creepy and Eerie, at least, is that those collected editions, all those volumes of collections, are available and out there. If you don't want to get the original issues, you can at least get the collected ones.
And they're affordable,
they're reasonably priced.
They're pretty affordable.
So
yeah, and you got one of those too. Yeah.
I did find one of those. Not at the con. I got that at McKay's afterwards, but yeah, no, it's just fun stuff. And one of the other things that I did find that I loved, and this is from Monica Gallagher, who I've talked about before, North Carolina Cryptids. This is the coloring book I picked up. She has gone through and researched cryptids in all 50 states and some Canadian provinces and Puerto Rico, and put them together in, just drawn them, put them together in reference guides and all that, and also coloring books. So you can actually see, hey, who is that? It's Lorelei of the French Broad River.
Right.
She is a
and
soggy.
Her con appearances, she did mention that she kind of tailors what she brings to the con. So, so there would be no New Jersey coloring book, but the New Jersey coloring book might exist. And if she did a con by me, I might be able to go.
She'd be bringing it.
Yep.
Or to Arkansas, she'd get your cryptids too. So like you can get all of it on her website.
Yep.
But it's pretty cool that she had those. Anyway, it was just one of those fun little things.
All right, you want to start talking comics apart from our experience? Let's get to it then. Now we're in Pride Month still. We still have a few days left, and both of the big two provided their annual Pride collections.
Absolutely.
And Steve has one in hand, and I have one in hand. So that's how we're going to start the show off. So, Steve, why don't you talk about Marvel's Pride collection from this year?
I will. So, of the two, I actually do prefer DC's Pride specials. I think sometimes I think the stories are pretty good, but I do want to give props. Marvel does make a good effort. They have like a great rack of creators that they invite to contribute every year to their. It's usually Marvel Voices. It's under the Voices, little label. And this one was Marvel United #1, a Pride special, which I do have right here so you can see it better. This is just one of the covers. They had multiple covers, but this one features, a bunch of prominent, queer characters. In the front there, we've got a character I'm not too familiar with, but he does feature in the book, and that's Captain America of the Railways, I believe. And there's also, there's one of the other new characters from this past year, Kid Juggernaut, in the background there, and some classic ones, of course, like Hulkling and Wiccan and Hercules right there, comic book bear mascot with Bobby writing on him. I didn't know that Hercules was into chili twinks, but apparently he is. So awesome, good for him.
I mean, dated him and Marvel from younger. I mean, that's Marvel is straight up a twink. So I love America Chavez in this.
Yeah, America. This is actually a great image here. I'm trying to think who did that. This particular cover. Lucas Wernick.
Oh yeah.
Cover. So, but anyway, this one is good, and like the other, Pride specials that Marvel's put out in the past, it's a anthology, so it does have several different stories contributed by multiple teams. And just going down real quick, I don't want to go into them too much. We have the first story, Who We Are, written by Al Ewing and drawn by Kei Zama, with colors and letters by Brittany Peer and Irma Canevia. And it's basically Captain America of the Railways and his team popping in and causing havoc for Hatemonger and Hydra. And also bringing in, this is a character that I haven't done much with. I haven't had much experience with, but the Queen of Nevers, who is essentially, Eternity's consort. Like, the cosmic being that represents all the stories of Marvel makes an appearance in that story. It's very interesting. It's kind of a cool, just a cool plot device that they have in there, and beautifully colored, absolutely beautifully drawn and colored. So gorgeous right off the bat. Good Night, Blue Rose is a very sweet story by Wyatt Kennedy, with art by Bailey Underwood and Irma McVoss on color, or Irma again on colors. It's Mystique and Destiny kind of living a very domestic life with a young Nightcrawler, and Mystique is just sharing a really intimate moment with little Kurt, talking about how how he is and how she can protect him sort of inside the house that he's always loved and accepted, and it's very sweet. The Bolter by Zoe Terrell and Federica Menchen with Tamara Bonvillain on colors, of course. Sarah, who's a character I'm not too familiar with, coming from Angela and the Asgardians. Apparently, she was Angela's lover at one point, her girlfriend, etc. She was brought back from the dead, all of these things, and then somehow betrayed Angela. And in that, she encounters, she breaks into Camertage to steal a gem and runs into Black Cat, everyone's favorite chaotic bisexual lady. And they have an interesting psychological battle against despair. Very cool. And then finally, My Buddy, which is a story by Anthony Oliveira, with art by Pablo Collar, and colors by Michael Wiggum. And this is basically the story of Cap and Arnie Roth, his best friend from growing up on the streets of Brooklyn before Bucky. And then also, I believe, the first or one of the first out characters in Marvel. Originally debuted in 1982, I believe. And following up with the story, there is an actual interview with J.M. DeMatteis, talking about the creation of the character of Arnie Roth and what he represented in sort of the Steve, like Steve's history and his personal, growth as a character, mm-hmm. and why he's important to, the image of Captain America. That, Steve's best friend and original protector was a gay man. So just very interesting mix of stories here, beautiful colors, some really great art. And it's just fun getting to feature some of these characters that we don't see too often in the general books that come out. I mean, obviously we've got some some queer centered books that are pretty front and center at Marvel, but I guess it's the new Avengers Academy. Of course you've always got Young Avengers. I think is it Helverines that's now featuring Dakin, and a couple other ones. But it's nice to have something that's just specifically geared towards just queer characters, and specifically queer characters that don't get a lot of play normally. So it's pretty cool. I recommend it.
That exact thing, though, is my problem with Marvel, and to some extent DC, although not as much, is that they have a good lineup of queer characters, and Marvel just does not use them well.
Not enough. Yeah.
Like I said, they're the most egregious of the big two on that. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I would tend to agree because at the very least we usually have a Harley Quinn monthly.
Yeah.
And, so I would probably agree with that. Yeah.
And we have a couple comments here. So Joel the Geek again. I'm bummed my comic store sold out of this one. Need to go buy another one to get it. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. And there are several different. I think there are several different covers, but one of the things that they did feature in this issue is they brought in the other covers for Pride that Marvel has put on some of their books. So there's New Champions #6 with Kid Juggernaut, Deadpool #15 with Valentine Vong, X-Men #17 with Prodigy featured prominently, and some other ones, of course. Runaways #1 is back, and it has Nico Minoru on that cover as well in the for the special variant. And then we also have Lima Nato, who's joined us. Hey, Lima. Praise to Lucas Wernick, our Brazilian bear artist, doing what he does best. And yes. So that is awesome. And yeah, I was very, very happy with this cover. It's beautiful. So
in case Lucas watches this, the Hercules' nipple on that cover is just chef's kiss.
Oh, let's bring that up. Hold on. Yeah, if you can just.
And I talked about my idea for a Champions comic at the con, set in the 70s, and they're all snorting blow and they're all fucking each other, and we need that.
It's like Studio 54, but with powers.
Yeah. They don't even have to really use them.
But the Champions was also set in Los Angeles, so that's a whole different vibe of debauchery. I mean, it's probably more porn influenced because of the porn industry out there. Oh, it'd be so good.
You can picture the film artifacts and the slightly off funked soundtrack at the same time.
Oh, it'd be so good. It'd be so good.
Just picture it.
Boogie
Nights Marvel presents,
Champions 75.
In a very sad way, the more information that comes to light, the more I'm like, I don't know if I would have liked that. I don't want to walk into a party and seeing Ronald Reagan's wife giving blowjobs in L.A., which is what she did a lot. No, Nancy.
But she said no to drugs, so
stop the man.
Allegedly.
All right, well, it's up to me to look at things from the DC side of things, and this year's DC Pride 2025 is titled "A Light in the Dark," and it has another name in the actual story called "The Heart Waits," and this one's a little different. This actually is a continuous story with a number of different creators involved, but as you see on the cover there. It's dominated by Alan Scott, but we also have stories involving The Question and Connor Hawke, Joe Mullen from the Green Lantern Corps, Bunker, Harley Quinn, Blue Snowman, to throw something out of there that is a bit obscure. Midnighter and Apollo's in the mix there too, and this one is the most bold of the 5 DC Pride compilations that the anthologies that they've come up with, because it does have a linking story to all of them. Mm-hmm. And so where we are at the beginning of the story, it takes place, starts in Gotham City. Apart from Batman, the Golden Age Green Lantern, that was also his home turf there. And they're at a very old hangout for the LGBTQIA community, and Alan Scott and the Question are talking to a trans man named Ethan Rivera, and Alan shows Ethan the spot in which he and his first same-sex love, Johnny Ladd, carved out a heart on a wall in 1936. And this actually sparks a bit of a cosmic reaction because of the histories of both Alan Scott and his former lover. It's actually infused with both Starheart and Crimson Flame energy. And so for a brief period of time, it creates these alternative realities for many of DC's queer heroes and villains. And like everything that happens in the DC universe, it's not exactly what it seems. So there are a host of creators involved. Vito Elia, Tim Sheridan, Just Trujillo, Mae Houston, Donna Guio, Alex Moore, Vincent Cecil. And somehow these disparate stories hang together pretty well because of the framing device of Alan and his first love. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of each story, but just to let people know that you run the range of satire, of just absolute charm, and real tear-jerking moments as well. And it's a very nice journey. And I thought this was one of the things where when I saw what it was like, I thought, well, the stories that they've had in the anthologies, are so disparate. Of course they're anchored by the LGBTQIA element.
They're all over the place.
But this one hung together, I thought, really well. So, Caleb, it sounds like you read this as well.
I did, yeah, and I think you're absolutely on point, right? And I do like that we're being guided through this by Alan Scott. I think that was a great moment to where he's not only like, I guess canonically now he would be the earliest queer character in DC, right?
Likely,
Yeah. I think so. But to have him kind of introduce, go through his issues and his journey, and the really hard. I mean, that story in and of itself is heartbreaking. But to allow him to introduce you to all of these characters, even the alternate universes of them, it's kind of like an Elseworlds thing. It sticks really true to the spirit of these characters, even though it changes a few things up. There were several moments in here that I got really choked up at. I thought the story of the Question interacting with Batwoman was fantastic.
How about the Pleasantville version of Apollo and Midnighter?
I love that. I absolutely. Well, and actually, we're both on a Slack channel for another podcast that we're both, a bunch of our friends, and I shared that. Like, I loved that. Just like you said, very wholesome. Very Saturday Night Post, kind of cover of Midnighter and Apollo. I just thought that was like not something I was expecting, and not something I would have thought would have worked.
No, the Harley Quinn story was nothing I was expecting.
You mentioned the Blue Snowman. I loved that story. Probably one of the funniest stories in here. At least in my opinion. I thought that was great. And like you said, this is the first time I've read one of these types of one shots or these types of anthologies that really did all interconnect and have just kind of this unifying narrative, even though the stories are a little bit different in tone, in subject matter even, but there's still a unifying narrative to them all. And it's very cohesive in the way that, most anthologies aren't. Every once in a while you'll run into just an anthology in general that has a unifying theme that runs throughout the book and unites everything, but it's kind of rare. I really like it when they do that, though, because it's got to be a hard task to pull off from an editorial standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean, just the dialogue between Ethan and Crimson Lantern at the end makes this book worth the admission price. And seeing Alan reunited, if only for a moment, with the love of his life.
Yep.
Oh, this is so good. And like I said, it's like it's certainly different from all the other anthologies that have come out under this banner, and I hope people look for it. But there also is a backup story, and just for people who know, Tony Isabella is a creator that's been involved in comics for both Marvel and DC since the 1970s. And at the age of 72, he began gender affirming therapy, and he now goes by the name of Jenny Blake. And this is his first story as Jenny Blake, which will eventually be expanded into a bigger story, but talks about his journey and the factors that led to him coming out and coming to an awareness of who he really is, or she really is at this point. And it was very good to see content like that. Considering last year we had that amazing story written by Kevin Conroy just before he passed away.
Yeah.
And I do hope we have that each time out now.
I really love that Jenny Blake story, and also the art by Sarah Soller in it.
It's wonderful.
Perfect. Yeah. It was so, because it's
let me
joyful.
Show some. I know it was really lax in giving you images, but
let me pull this down.
Beautiful.
Art. Yeah. Just, I mean, the art in this was great. Anyway, it was such a great mix of different art, but this story in particular was funny. And I learned that there is a queer comics convention in Cleveland called Flaming River Con.
Yep.
Because of this, which
Jenny had gone to as Tony as an ally, and then, as explained in the story, it was quite important.
I love that.
you
I
develop.
love that she wrote that story, though.
Mhm.
I really enjoy and appreciate stories about people who come out later in life.
Mhm.
The vast majority of coming out stories that we see in popular culture and the zeitgeist are all teenage stories, and
Yeah.
and hopefully rightfully so, right? I hope that we are moving towards an environment, or at least I need to, or I'm going to start slamming my head into the desk, that we live into an environment where it is safer for kids to come out and not hide or stifle who they are, right? Because that is actively what they have always done. It's not that they, go off and get ruined by some, weird liberal arts teacher. It's no, they know who they are and they just don't come out earlier. And hopefully we're creating environments where that can happen. But I think it's also too important to know that, number one, many people don't come out until much later. I mean, she was in her 70s and came out. I think that's very important to tell those stories, because older generations, I mean, if you're watching, I mean, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're part of that older generation, it also goes to show that, like, our identities and stuff are not solely about sex, like, and because that's something that we hear all the time, that just constantly, it's like, oh, you're just obsessed with sex, you're sexual perverts. I mean, that's the slurs that are thrown at us. Our identities are not about sex. That's a very small part about who we are, right? And I think that's true for the older generation as well. They come out. I'm not saying that you have to be over or done or not having sex in your late 70s. There are plenty of people do, but that's certainly not you're not in your 20s anymore. You're not chasing everything. It's just more about being comfortable in your own skin and finding out who you are. And I mean, I've got several very important people in my life that came out in their 40s and 50s, and their stories give me a lot of strength and a lot of power, because life is not over. Right, life is not over after 30. Sorry, I know we talk about twink death, right? But it's not. It's not over after that. Like, there's a lot of life to live, and it's almost just as empowering as, like, the Morgan Freeman stories, right? Where he didn't start acting, get his first acting gig until well into his late 40s, and now he's Morgan fucking Freeman.
Yeah, but I also think a story like this is a very important story to tell, because sometimes there is the track of, I was closeted for 47 years and then came out. That wasn't Jenny's journey.
No, gender and sexuality is fluid, right? And
that wasn't Jenny's journey at all. And I think it's very important to get those stories out there.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we both guarded the first two books. So, Caleb, it's your turn. What you got?
All right, so I've got a book. I'm going to stick with the theme that we're going for. It's not a pride book per se, but it is a queer book, and it is an anthology. And I got it in during Pride Month. And that book is called Young Men in Love. And I got it. I backed this Kickstarter, saw it, wanted to grab it. Really, really enjoyed it. And here is, Bill is dying laughing. What's up?
This was an ever-present presence at the con as well, because Jarrett Melendez of this book has a story in there.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it was available at other vendors outside of Indie Alley. So this was an ever-present presence.
Well, I love
it was Savage Sword.
Because I love that was because it's a fantastic anthology. It is really fun. It is Pride Month. And B, because several creators in here have strong connections to us in this podcast. Every single story in this anthology, every single one, was lettered by our very good friend Lucas Gattoni. Lettered them all. It also has a really, really great story by David Hazan in here. So I should say this anthology was edited by Joe Glass and Matt Miner. Unless you're living under a rock, you probably know who those people are. Big fan of Matt Miner, just because of he helped with those Guar comics. Gay, queer person, really into metal and alt stuff. I just think he's pretty rad. But all in all, this story is the opposite of what Bill's was. There is no kind of unifying, overarching narrative to this. They're just a collection of really fun stories. All of them, they are centered around gay men, right? So we get a lot of that, and you get a little bit of fun. You get humor. You get sad stories, right? You get a little bit of everything. I'll talk about David's because friend of ours. I'm very proud of him for having a story in this. But his in his kind of style, as he is wont to do, he writes a story that's very mythic in its sensibilities and a little bit sword and sorcery. And it's about these two men who serve as essentially scribes for the gods. Deuce, the god, not Zeus, but Deuce. And they're writing, they're scribing all of these, love ballads that come down that are inspired by the gods, but they're also in love with each other, and they kind of plot for a second to run away and to skirt away of their duties. And therefore they're cursed by the gods to constantly not be able to speak, to not be able to tell each other how they feel. And the only way they can break the spell, the curse, or whatever you have it, is by telling each other how they feel. It's also the situation, that kind of age-old tale of where you have two figures. One always tells the truth and one always lies. And you have to be able to figure out which one is which to be able to understand what's happening here. Fantastic story. That one is drawn by Noah Dow. And again, lettered by Lucas. Beautiful art. I should have sent you some of the stills from it, but I could not find any really great pictures that translated well offline, and I didn't want to just send you screenshots. But my favorite, and honestly, this is my favorite page in the whole book, is that one right there. I love the sensibilities of it. I love the layout. I think it's very, very well done. The lack of panels, just one big flowing page. Another one that I really, and probably the funniest one of all, that I thought just really pulled me in. It's called Final Boys, and this is written by Matt Miner with art by Daryl Tote. And this, I have told you all how much I detest reality television. I have specific and particular, just vehement hatred of like the dating reality TV shows, like the dating contest shows. And my husband loves these, watches them, and I do not like just brain rotting bullshit that is a curse upon our society. And he watches them, and the other day he was like, "Well, no, there's new ones now, and there's queer people and gay people." I'm like, maybe that is the sign of equality, where we can also contribute to the mental decline of our nation through vapid bullshit on television. Maybe that's what equality is. I don't know, but I hate these things. And I think Matt Miner might too, and that makes me very happy. So this particular story starts off. This guy he's the figure person on the Bachelor style dating show, and he's going through and he's supposed to be meeting all these guys, and it is essentially like, I don't know, walking into a very thumpa gay bar at 1 o'clock in the morning, where all the people are just like looking, all the sharks are circling, right? It's like everybody's like with these awful pickup lines. All of them just look like, they're just trying to get a one night stand. It's very much, except for this one guy that he talks to, and this one guy's like, "Hi, I don't have a cheesy pickup line, and I think you're nice." Just kind of a wholesome dude. And the main character who's at the forefront of this doesn't like any of the other skeezy guys. He's like, "I don't want to be here." I mean, that one guy made an impression. Maybe I'll talk to him. And they do. They get together and talk. But after the first night, everybody goes to bed. In the middle of the night, you hear something go thump in the night, right? Something as terrible has happened. And the wholesome guy, the one that we like, comes running into our main character's room. And he's just like, "Hey, there's a killer on the loose in here. I don't know what's happening. It's already got 4 people. We have no clue what's going on. We have to get out of here." And about that time, the killer busts in and starts chasing them, and they have to, get out of there. They end up hiding in a car, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of there, but there's no keys in the car. And this kind of ethereal figure, this, when you think about horror movies, be it Halloween or Freddy, it's all, the slow trudge, no matter how fast you run. It's kind of the vibe you get to this character walking in there. And as they just decide, hey, you know what, this is it. If I got to die, I really like you. I'm going to die next to somebody that I think is attractive, funny, and I'm hopefully you would have been the person I fell in love with. And they kiss, and the murderer dude evaporates. And I guess they find true love or something like that, and it saves them. But again, it was just really funny, just these different tropes of just annoying gays that we all know who they are. They exist. on doing a stupid, vapid, brain rotting reality show, and you get two actual humans, right? And I loved that. So if you get the chance, pick this up. It was I'm not sure what company. AWBW is the, I guess, maybe Blue Wave.
Wave Blue
Yeah.
World. Wave Blue World.
Yep. Yeah, so they published this. Man, just a lot of fun. Very, very cool stories that just kind of, like I said, they range the gamut of what you might experience in a queer anthology. But I really dug it.
Nice. This is a sequel book too. I think they had they originally had just Young Men in Love, no subtitle, and that came out 22, 23.
I can't remember if I bought that or not. I think I did.
And also,
I know I have it somewhere.
Let's hope next time around it's middle-aged men in love.
Yeah,
we're just as hot.
But yeah,
our stories are certainly hotter.
Now there are some daddies in here. One of the real cool stories is actually called Parties of Three. It's written by Hamish Steele, drawn by Giapotta, and this is a very Dungeons and Dragons type story. You know, these a bard and a knight are on a quest, and they hear about a troll that's doing terrible things, so they're on the quest to kill it. Turns out it's a guy who is a troll, but he's just like, I'm not doing bad things. I'm just not what they think I am. I'm just trying to exist, and they think I'm this hideous older thing. Anyway, they become a throuple and live happy ever after, and it's just a bunch of bears. It's just a bunch of older bears that are just happy and in love. And so there are some in there, but you're right. We do need more than just like, you know, early 20s to 30s folks in these stories.
Especially given some of the creators.
yeah, exactly.
they entered their daddy era. So.
Yeah. I want to see more of that.
All right. So let's go. Well, let's just keep this order. Steve, what else do you have?
So this one is not a a Pride related book, but it did come out in June, and it is sort of part of the anthology sphere, in that it started out as just one short story in an issue of Epitaphs from the Abyss, which is the sort of the horror anthology put out under the EC imprint by I believe it's Oni, I think, who's doing these. Yeah, Oni Press. So it apparently proved so popular. It was from issue number 3 of Tales from the Abyss, or Epitaphs from the Abyss, that they made it its own miniseries. So issue number 1 of Blood Type, which concerns itself with a vampire named Ada. In the original short story, she was written by Karina Bechko and drawn originally by, let me see if I have, don't have the original artist listed on this, but in this book, she's being drawn by Andrea Sorrentino, who has a very cool sort of noirish, kind of, just really fits the vibe of like a horror or sort of like a, more macabre kind of sentiment. Whereas the original story was kind of goofy and kind of lighthearted. This one, it picks up right after the short story. Ada has eaten her way through a lifeboat of survivors from a downed ship, and she's picked up and rescued by another sailing vessel, and of course she eats her way through that too, and ends up on a tropical island that's a major tourist trap. She's discovered by one of the employees, and she immediately, threatens him to death, but he is not shocked or surprised that she's a vampire. And she's surprised that he's not surprised, and he begins to tell her that he thinks that the island is infested with vampires already, due to bodies being found of tourists. Well, she immediately makes him her thrall, and attempts to take him around to to try and find more out about these supposed vampires that are also on this island. She doesn't really believe him necessarily. She doesn't think that's the whole story. And when she runs into a group of other workers at this resort, some of the things that they say make her question that as well. So it's just the start of the journey. It's really interesting. She's kind of a horrible bitch, but a horrible bitch in the way that Megan from the original Megan 1.0, I guess. I've heard 2.0 is kind of stanky. But the original Megan, where she's campy, she's kind of a horrible bitch, but you kind of like her too at the same time. This definitely promises to have more of that. And it is a 4-issue miniseries, so it's a pretty quick thing to get into. And I'm sure it'll be collected as well afterwards if you didn't want to, wait for the floppies month to month. But it's fun, and it's the first foray for this new, EC imprint by Oni to kind of take some of those stories and kind of go in a new direction with them and expand on them a little bit. So we'll see if they do this with any of the other properties and any of the other short stories that they've come up with. Now that they're going into pretty much, I think this is now their third year, second or third year that they're continuing with this series of books. So really excited. I love them. I love what they've been putting out, and this was pretty fun too. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have been keeping up with any of them, but I absolutely love them, and I've talked about them way too much.
I haven't, but it's not going to be hard to twist my arm to read a Andrea Sorrentino book. So I need to grab this and look at it. And this is one of the problems now that I've shifted over to mostly digital is because I'm using DCBS for the actual physical books I get, but I'm also terrible about looking at previews. So I just kind of get what I know I want, and I don't look forward at stuff, and I need to grab these somewhere.
Yeah. And I think, they are collecting them. So there are already, I believe, 2 volumes of Epitaphs from the Abyss, and they've already collected Cruel Universe and Cruel Kingdom Volume 1 for each of those. Yeah, so they're those were the shorter ones, Cruel Kingdom and Cruel Universe, and they're actually going to have maxi series now coming out this year for at least Cruel Universe before they go into their next horror anthology book series as well. So it's pretty exciting time if you're a revived EC fan, this new NU EC.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I'm going to drift away from anthology, drift away from the Pride element, and I'm venturing into superhero deconstruction. Yay!
Ooh.
Okay, so we have had some really good examples of deconstructivism in comics that isn't Watchmen over the last few years. The 2 that immediately come to mind are The Wrong Earth from Ahoy Comics, and the most recent at this point, it's a few years old, Peter Thunder Cannonball.
Yeah.
Peter Cannon Thunderbolt story from Dynamite. There's another one that I have not read. I'm wondering if you guys have, but I seem to see this mentioned in those with those often. Adi Shankar's The Guardians of Justice.
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. Okay, so
on that topic, Bill, would you consider Black Hammer to be in that vein?
I think there's elements of it in there. I don't think it's its principal. Just because I think some of the solo stories like Barbalians and some of Black Hammer 45, I think they venture far enough away from that vibe. I think the core story probably yes.
Especially the first 12 issues, when it's just the folks on the farm.
Particularly Professor Starr.
Yeah.
I do think that it probably is shaking hands with that. So this one is a bit more gritty in regards to that particular world, and this is from Mad Cave, who are doing some really good stuff lately, both on licensed stories and original content. This is Whatever Happened to the Crimson Justice, #1. It's written by Frank Thierry, has art by Inaki Miranda, colors by Eva de la Cruz, and the letterer is Dave Sharp. And this is a Batman story and everything but title. Just a word on Frank Thierry. I think he's one of the most underrated writers that's working in comics. I think there's certain
I would agree.
writers like Scott Beatty and Jeff Parker that they should be getting more work, and should be getting more higher profile work, because I think they're all really good. And Frank Thierry, if you ever have the pleasure of talking to him, he sounds like a mob underboss, and it's an experience you need to have that at least once in your life. It's pretty cool. And this book is as vulgar as Frank is, and that's really cool, especially when you're working with Batmanish elements. So I'm going to keep saying Batman, but not going to explain why. So let me go into this. So this takes place in Empire City. And right off the bat, we're treated to the Crimson Justice signal. Think bat signal, but a lot more red. And the longtime commissioner, Commissioner Burke, is standing on the top of a building. It's more ceremonial because the Crimson Justice has not been seen for decades. But there's somebody joining him there, and that's his old arch enemy, Dr. Mayhem. And in seconds, Dr. Mayhem slits the throat of the good commissioner. And he leaves him there to die, but the commissioner is a smart man, and he leaves a message in his own blood, mayhem. And that's where we start off the story. So the next day, we see a diner, a Greasy Spoon. And there is a gentleman who owns and operates the diner named John Redding. And he's there talking with his friend Willie. Now, Willie is writing a book about the Crimson Justice, so he knows all about the history. He knows that there was a sidekick named Reddy. He knows that there were other superheroes that used to run around with the Crimson Justice in Empire City, like Misconduct. That's my favorite name. Scarlet Girl, Black Knight, and Urban Avenger. They all met their untimely ends in different ways. Not necessarily their deaths, but their end to their career. And in 1985, there was a hospital fire. And Reddy, who was Crimson Justice sidekick, and Crimson Justice himself have never been seen again since that fire. And Empire City is crime-ridden. And we then move on to a woman named Sally giving a hand job to a criminal, to a mob dude in a car. And we find very slowly that she actually is Scarlet Girl. And this is where I want to give big props to Inaki Miranda on art, because she perfectly, and I believe Inaki is a female, just perfectly provides that kind of nowhere to run junkie look to a character. I just thought the treatment of Sally was just darkly gorgeous. Let me put it that way. So they enter the diner establishment. There's a long history there with all these characters. The radio comes, the TV changes to an alert, and we find out about Commissioner Burke's death. And there are some very knowing glances between Sally and John, and the scene ends. But then John goes home, and there's a letter waiting for him, and it's from Ted Burke, the commissioner. He provided that whoever dropped this letter off for him had no idea about the situation. Commissioner Burke provides that he knew for a very long time who the Crimson Justice was, and if he was reading this letter, that Commissioner Burke had to be dead at this point. Now, he was uncertain why Crimson Justice gave up the ghost in being a superhero, but as he reads this letter, you see John putting on the costume of the Crimson Justice, and that's the end of the first issue. So a really nice setup. Seems like very interesting characters that are going to be populating this story. Perfectly paced comic book. And again, if you're a Batman fan, just jump on this. It's going to wet your whistle. no matter what kind of flavor of Batman is most appealing to you. This was really good. And
So,
in terms of color, this is a wash in crimson. It isn't just the color. It isn't just the cover. It's just really good use of that particular end of the palette there.
do you happen to know how many issues this is going to run for?
It's solicited for 5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let me try to grab this.
Yeah.
I like these. You know, I wasn't really thinking about the dark side of things when you were talking about deconstructivism in comics.
Yeah.
But the way that you were talking about some of this, it actually reminded me a little bit, not the events, but just kind of tonally of Rick Veitch's Brat Pack to some degree. Just not being afraid to really dive into the dark side of that world.
Yeah, and there's also some Daredevil vibes going on there too. Of course, Batman is the most obvious analog, but Thierry is really good at pacing. He's really good in pacing a comic story, a 22-page story, and so there's a lot of setup. It's a number 1 issue, so there's a lot of setup. But it feels like this is just the icing on the cake, and the real story's coming. And cool. I'm looking forward to that real story.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what's another book you got?
Well, I'm going to bring us full circle. I'm going to take us back to Marvel. And I'm going to follow where Bill took us away from anthologies and took us more towards superheroes. I'm going to take us all the way there, not deconstructivism, just straight up superhero comics, featuring one of my favorite characters, Namor the Submariner. Very excited about the wrap up of this series. And I read the last 2 issues, and I wanted to kind of bring them to the table. Now, I spoke about the first issue or the first couple of issues on this a couple months ago, maybe last year at some point. Did either of you get a chance, or have y'all read this? Either of you picked
only
this
the
up?
first issue?
Okay,
only
so
the first issue.
This is written by Jason Aaron. It's got some really strong artists throughout. The kind of person who follows it all the way through is going to be Alex Lenz, but Paul Davidson's also in there, and then you've got colors by Niraj Menon, letters by Joe Caramagna, because he does everything, and that's just what it is. But if you remember me talking about this, it opens up with Namor basically in a prison after Jason Aaron's Avengers. Namor tried to conquer the Earth and avenge all the stuff in the oceans, as Namors want to do, caused a big hullabaloo, and got himself stuck in the raft and drained of any moisture and just stuck there forever. And except that's, Stingray shows up one day with an ultimatum saying, "Hey, I'll let you out, but in your absence, the 7 tribes of Atlantis, or of the deep, we hear about the 7 seas, they're going chaos, man. They're trying to it's like regime change, right? You drop something and change the regime, and it tries to fill the vacuum, and it's usually not the best people who end up trying to fill that vacuum. And so he's like, you got to get out, because they're destroying ships, and the world's governments are about over this bullshit, and they're fixing to start nuking all the ocean floors. And so he gets out and is going to go, do what he can do to save the day if he can, try to convince them or whatever. But Namor is also very much in a self-exile to a degree too. He regrets a lot of the actions that he's done, and is very, he's failed the world, he's failed Atlantis, he's failed his people. He's a shamed king, if you will. And then goes through a lot of adventures and a lot of problems. Issues 7 and 8 culminate everything, right? They bring everything together, and it's just basically Jason Aaron flexing a little bit, being like, hey, I know this continuity, and I can play it like a puppet master. And this story really showcases what Jason Aaron does best, which is take a singular figure and dive into it and manipulate that person, and then pull back the layers of what it is and show you the inner strife and the angst. And he does this particularly well with male characters that are violent in nature. To me, that's when Jason Aaron's at his best. Never write another team book. Just don't. Never. Your Avengers was hot dog shit. Never do that again. More of this, please. This is fantastic. So where this comes to is you have these 7 tribes, right? And they've all been at each other's throats, but now they've kind of come together in a unified force against Namor because he's back and he's been taking names and kicking ass. And there are a lot of figures in here that we have seen, throughout the history of the Atlanteans. And, really great splash page that kind of shows you at least stand-ins for these figures. You get the Riflemen of Hadropolis. You get the Lemurians, who are those weird, like, man-eating gremlins. You get the Archers of the Atumak Deep, the Leviathans. You get the Darkest Mystics of the Sunken World, the Whales and the War Sharks of the Riders of the Secret Seas, and the Army of the Risen Dead. And all of these folks are ready to go, and they want war. Well, Namor stands in front of them, and particularly this woman who is part of, or at least the leader of the Secret Seas, which no Atlantean king has ever swam. And they're just over being ruled by somebody who won't even deign to step foot in their parts of the ocean. But he tells them all, it's like, you none of you want the crown, and none of you realize that all of you, your families, your peoples, get to swim in freedom because of the sacrifices that I have made being Namor. The crown is not a thing, it's a person. And I've done this, and I've failed you repeatedly, but I've also let you reap the benefits of all my sacrifices. And in order to take that, in order to be that crown, you've got to earn it. So I'm right here. Bring your armies, all of you. Come get me. Like it's almost that moment where it's, the one man standing in front of the hordes of armies. He's like, and he does it. And he battles all of these armies, just doing everything. And he doesn't kill a single one of them, but he injures them. He takes them out of commission, lays waste to them. He's stabbed. He's being, gutted. He's getting hit with magic. He's just getting pummeled, but he doesn't fall, and he doesn't kill, and he keeps pushing them. And at some point, he starts singing. He starts singing an old hymn of the deep seas, and the whales hear this, and the they start weeping, and the mystics understand this, and it starts turning the people, and they're just like, okay, well, we're on to something. And he starts using this ancient Atlantean magic. The backdrop to all this, and really particularly cool thing that you see in issues 7 and culminates in 8, is that you get the untold story and the history of the sinking of Atlantis, and we finally get some continuity into what happened. It's not a curse. It's not a blessing. It was the really not well thought out manifestation of Neptune. This god that they all worship. In the ancient years, 20,000 years before, before now, when Atlantis sunk to the sea, it was Neptune who was really upset and tired of all of these men, peoples of Earth fighting wars to praise the gods, and no one really fighting wars in prayer of him. And he had no people in his depths. And so he sunk Atlantis and gave the Atlanteans ability to breathe underwater purely as a power play to get people in his realm to go to war to worship him, right? This kind of narcissistic god move that we see in all the gods, but that's how Atlantis happened. That's how the Atlanteans came to be. And throughout history and time, they all spread to the different parts of the ocean. And somehow, through the singing of this mystic song, Namor taps into that, and he goes back and he parlays with Neptune in this, and he's basically, saying, you did this, like you are the one, like there was no point in this. It's senseless. And we worship you, right? Like all of these people they sacrifice themselves to you, and you did it out of pure like gluttony for yourself. And I'm done with this. Well, of course he's a god, right? He's not going to let Namor be done with this. And so he starts doing his machinations. In issue 8, we see Namor finally just stop, and he tells him, he was like, you know what? You created me. You created me to be your ultimate weapon of war. And I am. And I'm going to continue to be war. I am the king of your kingdom. But if you don't stop, I have their ears. I'm going to turn the entire. I will go throughout the seas. I will break down all of your temples. I will shatter all of your statues. I will cut the tongues out of anybody who mentions your name, because the only power that a god has is the power that a god has through his followers. That's it. And so you need to shut the fuck up and stop meddling with my affairs, or I will end you. No one in the ocean will ever speak your name or sing your praises, and you will have no power here. And basically takes that and reduces that power. At the same time, Namor wins his fight, and he is able to unify all the 7 tribes. And he is going to go swim in the sunken depths in this ocean that no Atlantean has ever seen. But he also realizes the weight that he carries and having failed these people. And he makes the decision. I'm going to spoil some things, which is a couple months old now, so I don't feel bad. But he makes the decision that Atlantis no longer needs a monarch. Mm-hmm. And so he takes his trident. He claims his throne and says, I'm the new king and I'm the last king. Shatters the trident and breaks it and installs these 7 figures as a sort of democracy, right? As a sort of governance of Atlantis, and unites the tribes of Atlantis all in one for the first time in history. And then he disappears. He goes out into the ocean. There's a fantastic scene at the end of issue 8. He's going in the deep part. And a lot of this also throughout the story, it's being narrated by this old pauper, this blind man who is at the deepest part of the ocean floor, that he's just destitute. He's just kind of sitting there waiting to be fed. Cool backstory and some continuity in that too. This character we've seen before in the history of the Submariner and all of those, Tales to Astonish. But he's narrating all this to some degree, and he's sitting there, and all of a sudden Tiger Shark shows up and was like, you know what, Namor may have done whatever he did that, but the depths are mine. We're gonna take your food, we're gonna eat you, do whatever. And the old guy's just like, of course, a meal finally shows up, and then some people calm down, and all of a sudden the killers come out of the framework. He's like, that's right, Tiger Shark is. He's like, oh, I wasn't talking about you. Like a torpedo, Namor comes in and just doesn't say a word, just beats the ever-loving hell out of Tiger Shark and everybody, leaves him into a bloody pulp, and just basically lets him know in a very much almost in a scene to me that it's weird making this parallel, but very much like the depiction of Batman as a wraith, not as a figure, from like Arkham Asylum, where it's showing him as this force of nature. That's what they show Namor as, and he just lets him know, you meddle in the deep, you break our laws, you endanger our peace, and I will be there. I will be coming at you. I am now I don't need the throne. I don't need the accolades. I don't need the followers. I'm going to protect these people from the outskirts. If you come into our oceans and you commit war, or you break our peace, or you hurt our people, you will not see me coming, and I will absolutely take you out. He is the stealth bomber of the underwater world. And I think this is a fantastic place to leave that story. Okay. Also, I will say, they brought back Atlantis in a really cool way. Atlantis is now, it's a subcontinent again, but it's now mobile. It can go anywhere in the ocean, anywhere in the 7 seas. So it's not just one figure place that all these people are supposed to go around. It can go in any realm in the ocean.
Okay, so
sorry.
I imagine this is going to be collected in one volume if it's only 8 issues.
It should be. Yeah, I will be double dipping if I want them to give a hardcover to this because the art is spectacular. You get this beautiful renditions of Namor from when he was a kid. Alex Lins draws those. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. The art by Davidson almost reminds me a little bit of Carlos Magno. He has got like a little bit of grotesque beauty about him in this, but it's some gorgeous work.
Okay, I have to say, like, I bailed after the first issue, and I normally give Namor a try. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like I missed out on Namor, God of Thunder.
Basically, yeah, and yeah. That's a good analog. And there's some issues where it has that kind of thing that issue 3, issue 4 slump because there's one storyline and then it goes into another and then it kind of culminates. But Jason Aaron knows the continuity. He knows the character, and he realizes he makes you feel the stakes of this. In a very personal way. And so yes, I'm a huge Namor fan. I'm a mark for this, so it's not hard for me. But I will say I did not like the Namor story in the Avengers that he wrote. So go check this out. It'll be worth a while.
Some of my earliest exposure to Namor was Supervillain Team Up.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Dorcas and Tiger Shark were part of that. And Tiger Shark was such an asshole. So I'm glad that him getting the shit kicked out of him is an element of that. So,
have they ever brought back his sister?
I have no idea.
Oh, I wonder if they had. That'd be interesting. If you're not familiar with the history, Tiger Shark was like invented to go battle Namor. He was kind of a broken dude, but his sister was also in love with Namor. So yeah, and you get Stingray in this too. You get all these characters that you know and love. It's really fun.
All right, cool. I'm definitely gonna be looking for the collected on that.
I geeked out hard on this.
Okay, cool. And I absolutely love God of Thunder. I thought that was a series that tied all these elements of Thor that shouldn't work together nicely. Yeah, and it sounds like you got like sadly only 8 issues, but it sounds like that's the vibe that's there. So I'm definitely in for it.
Well, it's almost like
I wasn't getting that vibe at all from the first issue.
It took it a little bit to get there, but eventually it did get there. And then I don't know if you remember Namor the Deep. That miniseries, but he's basically a wraith in that story too. So it has a lot of throwbacks and ties to that. So just like more of this, Jason Aaron. This is yay! Yeah,
right, cool.
Round of applause.
All right, well, we're gonna start wrapping up our show, and when we wrap out an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we have 2 final stops. The first of which is where we show off our Geek Gets. Now, we just went to a convention, at least 66.6% of us did. Steve, I don't know if you have Geek Gets from the con, but I very deliberately chose non-con Geek Gets. So let me throw it over to you first.
So I'm not going to talk about the con Geek Gets, although I did get some great ones. I've already shown kind of like a few of the things that I picked up. So I'm going to talk about a thing that I got at the con but wasn't from the con, and that is this wonderful, beautiful collected copy of The Long Halloween, the Jeff Loeb's Tim Sale classic for Batman that I got from our good friend Brian Newberry. So he got me a copy of this, which I was very excited to get, and I will be reading it. Even though I don't read a lot of Batman, I will be reading this one. But one of the things that I did pick up also over the weekend, not at the con, was at our local independent bookstore, Bookmarks, in town. And that is the new book by Alison Bechdel called Spent. It is not autobiographical. It actually is, yes, it has elements of Alison Bechdel's actual life in it, but it's a really funny story that kind of makes fun of, her success with her Fun Home memoir, the people that she lives with in Vermont, the people in her life that have inspired her, Dykes to watch out for, her actual life with her wife, and all of that. So it's a comic novel, not autobiographical, but I'm really looking forward to finishing this. I've started reading some of this, and it's pretty clever. And so if you like Alison Bechdel, definitely so far pick this up. Spent.
All right, cool. Over to Caleb. Caleb, show us some of your Geek Gets.
Well, I too am not going to show you Geek Gets from the con. I'm going to be stingy and keep those to myself. No, the only real Geek Get I've had over the last couple weeks, got a new album in because it dawned on me I did not own this album, and I've actually been learning a couple of the songs off this album on my bass, and I was like, I need this album. So I picked up Throwing Copper by Live. Which is one of my favorite albums. Love just bangers left and right. And so I'm very happy to have this in vinyl. It's the 25th anniversary edition that I picked up. So very happy me.
Cool.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to think. I saw the Throwing Copper tour, and there were 2 openers. One was PJ Harvey.
Okay.
I cannot think of the other act.
That's not who I would have thought it was, but that's interesting. Like that would be a good show.
Yeah, I have to look at the list, but there were 3 acts on the bill, and one was PJ Harvey.
So I've got Live, and another, like when I think of Live, I also think of Collective Soul. Like I kind of lump those 2 bands into a sound. Like to me, like they
don't sound anything alike, but they came out around the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it.
Also if you type in Live on,
they're on tour together. I know.
Panda, yeah, no, it's a thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, people like as a thing, people group them together. I don't necessarily know why, but even if you go on like Pandora or Spotify and you listen to like live radio, it's going to also play a bunch of Collective Soul. There is a connective tissue there that goes back.
I don't get it. I mean, I get it with Our Lady Peace. I totally get it with Our Lady Peace.
Yeah, they don't sound anything alike, but it is weird how they got back-to-back radio play a lot.
And you know, like I think of a band like Everclear. Everclear doesn't sound like any of the bands that they're lumped into.
No,
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess.
But yeah, it's that era.
It's like the post grunge.
Yeah. Well, I feel like with Everclear too, you're also getting that like Long Beach, California. Like a lot of the band, like Everclear gets limped in with like some ska bands too for some reason, and it's totally the California thing. I don't get it, but it does.
Yeah, I'll get it. All right,
but
there you go. Throw in Kappa.
Yeah, good stuff.
York, PA's finest. Okay. For my Geek Gets, I have a big box that came in just before we went to the con. So I'm so excited for the Superman movie. I'm so excited.
I can't wait. I want it to be great.
I love that there is a superpowers line specifically dedicated to Superman. So it's from McFarlane Toys. So this is Superman. And this is Guy Gardner.
Oh, cool.
With the bowl cut. This is Mr. Terrific.
Nice.
He's terrific.
Is Metamorpho with his shorts.
I guess they couldn't show him naked, but he's not. I mean, he's not.
This is Ultraman. They have an Ultraman figure. This was the kind of the chase figure. This was announced a little bit later. And we have vehicles and set lists and play sets too. We have the T-Craft. And we have the Fortress of Solitude.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Does it come with the crypto?
Well, there is a very limited version that comes with robot number 4, but this isn't the version that I got. They announced this and then they announced the limited edition, which it's not really cool. Yeah. But
it's not the one that has Alan Tudyk.
This was also the bundle, and you know, if I really need to scratch the robot number 4, I have him in 2-inch form. Yeah, so from Spin Master, this is a different one, which I think I showed the last time, but I'm very happy with the Superpowers Superman one. I'm very happy. I was open to this. I did that like happy clapping thing because I'm such a jerk. But so happy. So happy. Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, our last destination, our last stop is when we talk about the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic related, maybe a television program, maybe a film, maybe a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, I have two. One's a really quick one. A woof goes out to Joe Cassio, who hosted us this past weekend in Charlotte. It was wonderful staying with Joe and with Arthur and JW and getting to enjoy their hospitality and Arthur's cooking in the morning and Joe's cooking in the evening. So it was a lot of fun. And of course, they're cool. So thank you very much. But I did want to bring up a woof for something that just started. So my opinion is not complete, but based on my feedback on the first episode, I really enjoyed it. And that is the new Ironheart TV series. That dropped the first 3 episodes on Disney Plus this week. It is a series that confers itself to Riri Williams, played by Dominic Thorne, also known as Ironheart, and her move back to Chicago after being kicked out of MIT, and of course trying to find her place, trying to build her Ironheart suit, and become that hero that she is born to be. It's got a great cast. There's a lot of really cool people in here. You've got Shea Coulee If you are a Drag Race fan or a drag queen fan, Shea Coulee is wonderful. Anthony Ramos basically plays the Hood, but there's also some other great characters in there. Lyric Ross as Natalie, who kind of plays her AI companion, but also her now deceased best friend. Alden Ehrenreich is in this, and Sacha Baron Cohen plays a particular character that I think everybody's been waiting to show up in the MCU for a very long time. And is it really him? I believe so. We'll have to wait. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that this series continues to be interesting. I've heard some mixed reviews, but I don't always listen to the reviews because everybody's looking for something to pick apart.
Yeah,
and I'm enjoying this so far after episode 1. So, Ironheart.
Oh. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
All right, so my woof of the week, I'm gonna pull a Steve. I've got a split one, but one is the main woof of the week, right? And I'll go with that one first. It goes out to Jeremy Allen White and Ayo Edebiri and all the folks who make The Bear what it is. Season 4 just dropped. I've seen the first 2 episodes of it. Picks up right where it left off. It is pure chaos. It is anxiety on film, and it's absolutely wonderful. I love this show. Ebok Moss Backrack, who plays Richie, is still one of my favorite characters in this show. He's the cousin that runs everything. They're really getting more into fine dining and trying to get that that Michelin star, and they show you a lot of what goes into it and just everything like that. The second thing I just want to say, it is the end of Pride Month, and we won't be doing another show before Pride Month ends. I just want to give a woof and a shout out to all the activists and all the people who put together Pride celebrations and parades and just things and events all over the world, but especially in places where those things are really dangerous to do. Even here in my own home state, which it's not necessarily the safest place to be. Actually, it's got ranked the most unsafe place to be of all the 50 states in a study that came out a couple weeks ago. And we've got pride parades popping off left and right. And it was fantastic to see them everywhere, combined with a lot of the No King stuff too. Mm-hmm. So shout out to everybody who organized those. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Okay, cool. You took one of my woofs of the week, kind of.
Oh, no.
So I got 3-parters. I'm topping all of you right now.
That's not the first time you've said that.
Yeah. Oh, shit. It's not as common as you think there. Woo! So anyway, look at Steve laughing. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to give a shout out to the No Kings and Indivisible that put many of those together. I love seeing how the queer community basically morphed in a lot of things, and some in a very official capacity with Boston's Pride. You just said, No Kings, come on, that's what we're going to do in the afternoon. So it was great seeing that. I know Caleb went to one in Little Rock. I went to one in Princeton. A bunch of friends went to Trenton or to some of the other locations here in New Jersey, and especially with diaper babies, pathetic. I mean, what the fuck was that parade? I mean, what was that?
There were 8,000 people in Little Rock, which is almost as many people who were at that in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Oh, it was, I mean, some of the numbers in Jersey, like 10,000 in Morristown, like just amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, and it was also like kind of cool, like with that straight pride celebration, that being a bomb as well.
Not only did no one
10
show
of
up,
attendees, not tens, just 10.
Yeah, no one showed up and got hijacked by somebody.
Yes.
Like the performer who just sang like a pro-gay song.
Well,
good for that guy.
It's just things like this. Just there's a lot to be depressed about, but when you have these glimmers of hope, there's a lot to be encouraged about. And the New York mayoral race as well, the candidate that prevailed with the Democratic primary nomination, there's these signs, let's just keep them going, keep at it. So my Wolf of the Week is not really that positive line. My Wolf of the Week, things can be depressing, but sometimes it's media that you have to see. And for me, Surviving Ohio State is ranked among that. It's a documentary about the sexual abuse that occurred at Ohio State for over decades. Initially, the perception was that it was related to the wrestling team, but as we got into the documentary, it also affected the fencing team, the ice hockey team. One guy's just really tragic story of him losing faith in himself and in the sport itself, and just seeing how things transpired. It was not an easy watch. If you are triggered by this sort of content, pay very close attention and take those warnings very seriously. But I certainly hope that the gentleman that I talked about before, Al Nowakowski, and the other plaintiffs eventually find the peace that they need. And certainly after watching that documentary, I mean, fuck Coach Russ Kellington and motherfuck Jim Jordan.
Absolutely.
And it's just, in another time, he would have been drummed out of service at this point. I'm confident of that. And I hope we get back to that time. I really do. So Surviving Ohio State, but I didn't want to end on such a down note from myself. So if you are in the northern New Jersey area, I will be at Garden State Comic Fest this upcoming Saturday. You can go to their website and find some information. Some really good creators will be there, like Jim Starlin and the Simonsons, Sergeant Slaughter. So it's a good list. It's always been a very good shopping show. And if you see me, say hi. And two close friends of mine, it's their first con that they're ever going, and they're going full tilt. They got VIP. They're both dressing up. Yep. Chris and Latrice, I cannot wait to see you on Saturday, especially in that mode. So if you go to Garden State Comic Fest website, which I think is gcsf.org, you can find information about that. It runs on Saturday and Sunday. And just a big thanks to Dave, the owner of the con, for setting me up. So awesome. Looking forward to that. So that's better than Surviving Ohio State. Yeah.
I've got another one to end on a high note too. I just want to say we'd be remiss if we did not acknowledge that today, the day that we're recording this, is the 10th anniversary of the Obergefell decision. And if you remember that, if you can remember 10 years ago when that decision dropped, that was like a whirlwind 24 hours, because you not only had the Obergefell decision and Windsor right close to that, but you also had the Supreme Court essentially save the Affordable Care Act right when that happens. And then President Obama went and delivered that eulogy in Mother Superior Church, where whatever that white supremacist was went into church and murdered all of those people in a primarily black church. But a lot, like, his eulogy was a beacon of hope, as most things with him tend to be. But yeah, 10 years of marriage equality, and the fuckers who are ruining the world aren't on our side. So
yeah,
no meteors. The oceans haven't boiled yet. You've just got more jackasses that you're letting destroy the planet. So, yay, marriage equality.
And on that note, again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on social media as Comic Book Bears, save for Facebook, where you can find us as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us or listen to us through many of the podcasting platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you are watching us through Facebook Live, thank you. If you were watching us a little later on YouTube from the archive, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear Wolf and Explosion. We'll be back in about 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.